Hi friends, my name is Melissa Mortensen, and for those of you that are new here, I have a sewing and quilt pattern business. I design fabric for Riley Blake Designs, and I have a blog, polkadotchair.com, where I share free tutorials for quilt and sewing projects, and also love to share that kind of thing here on my YouTube channel. This is the second video in my On the Cutting Table video series. It's just a very casual, very chit-chatty way to share with you some of the things that I'm working on behind the scenes, things that you will see coming to this YouTube channel and to my blog in the coming months. So enough intro. First of all, Kingsley is here. Oh, where is he? He's over on this side. You can't see him very well. Hopefully, again, he behaves himself. He did really well last week. So I have three things I want to share with you this week. The first, I'm going to share some progress on some quilt blocks that I've been working on a sampler quilt that I've actually been working on for 5 years. The second thing, I got some fun goodies in the mail this week that I thought you guys might like to see. And the third thing is a little bit of an update on our April quilt kit drop patterns and a little more about that horse quilt that we talked about last week a little bit in the video. I have been working on a sampler quilt for 5 years. I need a little bit of background of why I've been doing that. We all know what happened 5 years ago. We don't need to go back and have any memories of that. But some of you may have heard of the Riley Blake Quilt Block Challenge. It is a really big challenge that Riley Blake Designs hosts every year. All of the many designers for them write block patterns that are shared on a weekly basis, and at the end they share a free pattern for a sampler quilt to turn. So you can turn all those like individual quilt blocks into a sampler quilt. So the way that that project started is back 5 years ago when we all needed something to do. A group of Riley Blake designers got together and said, hey, let's do this challenge where we each make a 12-inch and a 6-inch quilt block and share it on our site, and we'll each pick a different block, and then people can kind of go from blog to blog to blog to get the patterns and then make a sampler quilt. And it started out very informally. After that, Riley Blake went ahead and took charge of it, got it more organized, was able to offer PDF downloads of the blocks and fabric requirements, and much better at planning it out than our kind of on the fly just texting each other, hey, let's think of something for people to do. So we had 12 quilt block patterns shared, and I made all 12 of those blocks. And then I went to sew them together in a quilt, and I was like, you know what, I'm not feeling it. I need more blocks. Also, in the 5 years since then, some of the designers aren't blogging anymore, or the links to the patterns kind of went awry. So I went in and rewrote the patterns, or wrote the patterns from scratch for the ones that were missing. So you can find all of the block patterns on my site, polkadotchair.com. They're all for 12-inch blocks. I went through and cleaned them up, and they all now have a print button. If you see the instructions, you just scroll to the bottom. There's a big button that's green across the bottom that says print, so you can print it and have easy reference while you're working on your blocks at home. So I thought I would share with you those blocks because I have decided that I want to make my quilt 18 blocks, and then I'm going to set it so that it's a quilt block, and then like an alternate block and a quilt block and an alternate block. And I think it's going to end up being 30 blocks all together. So I'll have 18 of my blocks, or that's 40 blocks. 40 blocks, sorry. Math, like I actually am pretty good at math, but math on the fly while I'm talking to the camera, not so much. But so I'm going to set them in every other block with individual blocks in between. But I will share all the details when I get that organized, basically to say I've decided I need to make 6 more 12-inch quilt blocks. So I'm going to share with you the block that was our Wednesday project last week. It's on our site. I'll put the link here if you want to grab it. It's just for a very simple traditional Ohio Star quilt block. My quilt I am making out of all different, it's going to be very scrappy and very colorful, and I'm making it all out of fabrics that are in my scrap bin. So these are fabrics from my Tulip Cottage collection from last year, and then all of my blocks have a dark gray background. So this is the newest block that is up on the site. So Ohio Star, very traditional construction. I'm not reinventing the wheel or anything. And then here are some of the blocks that were shared recently that I've kind of gone in and re-pulled together and just re-inventoried stuff. So I'll just share them quickly. Got a sawtooth star, got a bear paw, a log cabin, square and square or an economy block, churn dash block, got a shoe fly block, bow tie quilt block, maple star, 9 patch. Then we've got a pinwheel with like a little bit of a twist, friendship star, and then a maple star. So most of those are sewn with some of my fabrics that I released in the past, Riley Blake. Like I said, I just very quickly went through my scrap bin. I'm making 5 more blocks to go, all going to be traditional, and all will be shared on the blog, and I'll have the finishing instructions and the finished quilt. So hopefully I'll have that done sometime early summer. So I have a blog post every Wednesday. My goal is of the 4 blog posts in a month for 2 of them to be those block patterns, so I can get that finished up, and then I'll have the alternate block instructions and the setting instructions to share with you guys too, and I definitely will share those as I work on them. So also, speaking of quilt blocks, I have a Patreon group. This year we are making a winter or a Christmas quilt in the group. I will drop a picture in here so you can see what we're working on. There is still time to join. Each month you get a video walking you through the steps of making the whole quilt block and a PDF pattern of the block. It goes for all of 2026, for all of 2025, then we'll have the quilt done in December, just in time for Christmas. So the block this week, or this month, is this one. It's just called It's Stars. Like I said, there is a winter version and a Christmas version. If you are interested in it, I'll put the link in the comments so you can check that out. And if you're in my Patreon group, make sure you log into the group and grab your PDF pattern for this month's block. You don't want to miss that. I got a couple of fun things in the mail this week. So the first thing is last summer, I actually have it here, I'm gonna grab it. Last summer, a group of Riley Blake designers and I decided to host a summer, we called it the Summer Block Party, and it was a program where you got 1 quilt block from each designer that turned into a whole big sampler quilt, and we sent those blocks via email, and when you guys signed up, you signed up for our newsletters, and it was just a fun way to kind of connect and introduce you guys to some designers that you might not have heard of before. My block was this sailboat block. There is a video showing you how to make this block and how to put the leather handles on the tote bag here on my YouTube channel. So the reason I mention that is because we're doing it again this year. I'm not going to give away any details or spoilers. We are changing a few things, but we are right now in the process of finalizing the color palette. And instead of just using Riley Blake solids, we've decided to also use some basics. We're going to use some of my sparkler basics and then some of my friend Bev McCullough's Dainty Daisy basics with Riley Blake. And she was kind enough, because we are trying to get all the colors matched up perfectly, get the right green, the right red. You guys that are quilters, you know how hard it is to make sure that all your colors kind of sing together. So she sent me some of her beautiful Dainty Daisy line, and I'll pull one of these fat quarters out so you can see it. Actually, I think the lighter one might show up on camera a little better. So if you can get the detail on that, but it's a really cool basic because she has tiny little daisies on there and then sprinkles of white dots just to give the fabric some texture. And what that does is when you sew a quilt together with all solid fabrics, it's really striking, and there's a lot of contrast, but sometimes you want things a little more blended or a little softer, or you want like a little bit of texture, especially if you're working with bigger fabric pieces and bigger quilt blocks. And using a basic like this with a little bit of interesting pattern really helps to add to that. So you can see all of the great colors that this comes in. This is a fat quarter pack. I will link Bev's shop. I bet a lot of you guys follow her already. She also has some really great prints, low volume prints with the whites. You can see that one. It's got some fun colors. So that is Dainty Daisy, and I am excited to pull that apart and play with it and start mixing up all my fabric swatches. And we all agreed on the color palette together, but I've decided to be the one to pick the specific like shade of Riley Blake confetti cotton colors for the quilt. So I'm going to pull that together, text all my quilty friends this week, and see how it goes, and then everybody has input, and it's a really fun collaborative process. So speaking of mail, so I got a PR box this week, which is kind of fun because as quilters you don't always get like a lot of like unboxing things. Like I'm not a fashion or a beauty blogger, but Riley Blake Designs has just expanded their line of confetti cottons. So I thought I would share what was in the box with you. It was beautifully packaged and I pulled it apart because I was so excited. So it's not as beautifully packaged, but you can see a really fun box. And in it, they sent a few samples of their confetti cottons. Their confetti cottons, so when I say confetti cotton, it is a solid fabric, meaning it's the same color all around, all the way out to the selvage. I sew a lot with solid fabrics. This is a Riley Blake confetti cotton on the side of this block. And they have the reason they sent this is they have recently expanded their color palette. They also sent me a handout for a really great quilt pattern, cute little keychain, and then a popper, which I get. If I was a tidier person, I would probably open this on camera for you guys, but since I'm not a very tidy person, it will take me months to get this cleaned up. So we're gonna leave that where it is. But this I thought was really cool, and I think that they are planning on selling this because I know when you're sewing at home and you're trying to match colors, it's hard. The computer screen is just wrong. So I thought this was really clever. So it is a fabric panel with all of the colors on it. So you could even, you can leave it like this. You could turn this into a quilt and keep it in your sewing room to match colors, but it's really great because if you are trying to match, I'm just pulling something off my cutting table. So if I'm just trying to figure out, oh, what pink goes with this fabric, I can come in here and pull up the pinks and find the pink that I think matches best the pink on that blue fabric. So I will double check with them. I'm 90% sure that they're making this available in retail for shops to carry. It would be a really great resource, especially if you're someone that lives in an area without a local quilt shop, so you need to order fabrics online. Then you've got actual like swatches of what the fabrics will be. The other cool thing they did, which I didn't realize they were doing, but was actually super helpful when I was trying to pull colors for that block challenge I was talking about, is they made a color wheel. And you've seen color wheels before. Kind of explains on the back how it works. But the cool thing about this color wheel is instead of just saying like red, orange, yellow, it has the specific name of the Riley Blake color on the color wheel. So if you're in the pinks and you want to know like which of their dark reds coordinates with the pink that you have, you can just follow the color wheel and it gives you the name. Like I said, super helpful if you're ordering, if you live in an area that you have to order a fabric online, that you can't buy something at a store in person. I always prefer to buy stuff in person. I know a lot of people say it's so hard to order fabric online, and I completely agree. Last thing to chat about is the quilt pattern you guys were helping me with last week with the foundation paper piecing, so I just thought you'd be curious. So it still looks like this. It is not a quilt pattern yet, but I do have the sample quilt to share with you, and it's a little kind of an interesting insider kind of insider information about how that quilt came to be. But first, for those of you, I was talking about the fence blocks, foundation paper piecing them. So I'm definitely going to include the foundation paper piecing in it. I decided to go ahead and also include the traditional piecing directions. My concern with including both was if the pattern is this big, it's really hard to sell because it's expensive to print. It takes up a lot of spot on the shelf. It's big to mail, and if you print it at home, it's big to print. So that was my concern with just including all the directions. It's a pattern, not a book, but I think I've figured out a way to kind of include all the directions in there. But thank you so much for the feedback. I was honestly surprised. I thought there would be more of you that were like, do not foundation paper piece that, but a lot of you guys agreed with me. It would bother me if those lines aren't straight, just like me. So you would be willing to, even if you don't love foundation paper piecing, you would be willing to give it a try for that portion of the quilt. So I thought I would share the quilt with you. So this is the quilt, best I can share. Put it here. Some of you may be wondering why I am making test blocks for a quilt that has already been sewn. A little bit of insider information. A lot of times when you design fabric, you have to make samples to show at trade shows or for shops to pre-order so they can see what things look like sewn together. And you don't have fabric yet because the fabric has to be printed, and it's like a really cool process of how the fabric's printed, but it's not a quick process. So what sometimes as designers we will do so that we could kind of get samples out is we will have panels of quilt tops printed, which this is a panel. This is not all pieced. Some of them are pieced. I pieced the Dresden, but the rest of it was a panel that was quilted. And obviously I will not put a quilt pattern out there that I have not sewn, as would any designer. So what I have to do actually is I have to go in and make the whole quilt from start to finish, send it to the editors and the testers so that they can make sure that my directions are correct. I don't have any mistakes in the pattern, hopefully. Seems like sometimes no matter how much I try and how many people I ask, sometimes we get little mistakes in patterns because we're human, and we definitely don't want computers writing our quilt patterns for us. So anyway, I thought you would think that that was maybe a little bit interesting, but that is why I am sewing sample quilt blocks, is because I need to make this quilt again. And it's actually totally fine. I don't mind making it again because it gives me two quilts, one that's kind of completed to show, and then the other one is a quilt top. Works really well if I need to take it to shows or when I do YouTube videos, so you guys can see like the front and the back of the blocks and really see how the quilt comes together. And then lastly, before I wrap up, thank you guys so much for your kind comments last week. A couple of you were not so kind. I just want to remind you, this is just a very casual, hey, if you could come up to my sewing room and sit in this chair, and I just did a little show and tell of what I'm working on. It's just that. It's not meant to be like a professional TED Talk. I'm doing my best talking to the camera instead of talking to a person, so there will be bumps along the way, but also I feel like this type of video, maybe that's part of what's appealing, is it's a lot more real than something that's super rehearsed. Maybe one of these days we'll be brave enough to do this as a YouTube live instead of pre-recorded, but I think I'm personally want a little more practice before I jump into that. Last thing is, as far as the April quilt kits, I do have a couple left of the blue. It's this aqua with the white roly-poly, and then the white, pink and white and gray with the black roly-poly. I will link those in the shop if you're interested, but we are very, very low in stock on both of them, definitely in the aqua. And I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you thought, and I will see you guys again next Monday. Actually, might see you a little sooner because I do have a tutorial for that cat block in the cat quilt to share with you this week.